Ever wonder what it's like to grow up with ghosts? Tune in for true stories of spiritually connected children. Angels. We all have them. They're our unseen guides, our companions, our teachers, and they're all around us. Sometimes they make themselves known in the most miraculous ways. Join me, Level 3 QHHT practitioner, angel communicator, and Reiki master, Christy Clemens Hoffman, with stories from real people who have experienced uplifting phenomena and real-life angel encounters. Welcome back to the Real Life Angel Encounters podcast, the podcast for those who like the positive with their paranormal and their spirituality with actual spirits. I'm Christy, your host. In this podcast, we hear from people like you who have had miraculous encounters, loved ones' visits, synchronicities, helpers from other realms, aliens, and yes, even winged angels. If it's uplifting and unexplainable, we want to hear it. Be sure to subscribe, like, or follow this podcast and tell your friends about it. The more people who know about this podcast, the more great storytellers we get. And did you know that Real Life Angel Encounters is now a book? Yes, Real Life Angel Encounters, Real People Share Real Stories of Miraculous Encounters is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Goodreads, and my favorite, bookshop.org. Be sure to order your copy and write a review. In fact, I would appreciate a 5-star rating and review for this podcast too. And now, on with the stories. First up is Ashley. Up now, we have Ashley from the Des Moines area. Now, Ashley and her cohort, Casey, are the hostesses of Abomination Goddess, which is a podcast that I have been on to talk about this podcast and the book and all the other things that I have going on. So this is a treat to have Ashley on this show. Thank you for joining me today, Ashley.
Yes, thank you. I am so happy to be here and yes, so honored. Thank you.
Oh, yay. Yeah, well, you have an angel story. Well, no, it's not really an angel story, is it? It's about other beings that are around us. What happened?
Yes. Okay. So this one I love to tell people if you're wondering if you're alone in the universe or, if anyone has your back. So this was probably 3 houses ago. I am one of those people that I wake up my houses so that they're part of me and I can read their energy when I walk into them. And so I had just dropped my children off at school and came home and put my hand on the doorknob, and immediately a voice said, "There's somebody in your house." And so I was like, a person or like a entity? Like, what are we talking here? Like, am I going to physically fight somebody or is it just like, an entity or whatever? And that was the first time that I've heard like an actual voice talking to me. So I was like, okay, well, listening to this, obviously. And so I got the feeling that it was not like a physical person. So it wasn't like somebody broke into my home, was trying to rob me or anything. So I go ahead and go in. I walk through my back door, through the kitchen, and get into the dining room. And I see what I describe as a dark purple, smoky, wispy thing about human size, but up above me. So kind of like right at the ceiling. And it just kind of wisps by me. And so this is the first time that I had seen something like that before. So I've always had entities around me, but the first time I've seen the kind of smoky thing. And
Wow.
so I do what any strong woman does. I called my sister and I was like, get over here right now. And so I was like, we're going to do this together, whatever it is. And so she came over. Luckily, she, only lived 5 minutes away. And so she came in and we're like, we're going to do this together. And so by the time she got there, it was gone. I didn't see it anymore, but I felt like it was still in my house, but it wasn't there. I couldn't visually see it. And so we start, we look around the downstairs area, we go to the basement, and then finally we go upstairs. And I was able to kind of just use my senses and track it. And it was in the master bedroom behind a chair that we had in the corner. It was kind of crouched down, and I could tell it was scared. And then by now, I have my sister, so she's my courage and my confidence. I have her with me. So I opened myself up just a little bit more to like just feeling, what is this? So I explained to her it's a young man, green shirt, blue jeans, and he just passed away and he's scared. Like he is so scared.
Oh,
And I'm one of those people where I can't exactly tell you how I know what I know, but I know it. And
yeah.
so I'm telling her he's very scared. He doesn't understand why he's not in heaven. He thinks maybe he did something wrong because he's stuck here in my house. We kind of talk through it together because we're like, well, now what do we do? And so then, yes, I'm like, he can't be here forever. I felt so bad for him. So I got down on my knees behind this chair in the bedroom and I just said to him, hey, you're dead. You're fine. Like you've done nothing wrong, but you do need to move on and you can. And so I had read like a Sylvia Browne book like years ago, and it talked about walking entities like to the light. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's just try it. And so I did say, look to see if there's a light around you and just go ahead and move towards it because that's going to get you out of here. And I promise you, you haven't done anything wrong. Like you're very good. You're loved. Just go and you'll find your people if you can just move towards that light. And so we did that. And then poof, he was gone. And so it was very interesting. We're just stood there like staring at each other. She can't see what I can see. She can't feel what I can feel. The only thing she could feel was that she said it just felt like pressure around her body and then it was gone. And so this is the interesting part is that we walked back downstairs and we're just kind of like, whoo, wow, that was crazy, right? And she gets a call from work. She worked with disabled people and helping them. And one of her people had passed away and it was a young man. And so, yeah. And we
Oh.
don't know like how he found his way over to me, but somehow my sister was able to help him still move on. So, yeah, it still makes me want to cry. Yeah. And I've never seen the smoky wispiness ever again. I do associate it with like, I don't know how to say this tactfully, but like somebody who just passed, like a freshly passed person. So I've never seen that again, and I'm kind of glad. I am glad that we did help him. But yeah, that's one of my many stories was that one. And one thing I did forget to say is when I had my hand on the doorknob and I was told there's someone in there, I did have a thought of running, and the voice did say, and I can't believe I forgot to say this, but the voice said very sternly, if I sent someone to you, you help them, like get in there, basically. And so that is also what kind of propelled me in there. I've also never heard the voice again. Like it was all just very new and bizarre and has never been repeated. I will say that I do have a recurring dream that I walk into someone's kitchen and they have a brick fireplace behind it, behind their stove, and behind that is a purple wispy body, which is weird. And I've had my recurring dreams come true. So now I'm always like, if I go to someone's house, I don't know. I'm like, if they have a kitchen that looks like this kitchen, I'm out. I'm running.
That is something that I was going to ask you is when you have your hand on the door and you hear this voice saying, there's somebody in your house. I thought, oh my God, weren't you scared?
Okay, this is going to make me sound super selfish because it was from a being that was bigger and greater than me, right? So very selfishly, I was like, why me? What are you going to make me do? Like, what kind of work am I going to have to do right now? Which, tired mom, just so you know, point of view, I was like, I don't need anything else. But that said, I am glad that then the stern voice was like, no, if I sent you somebody, you're going to help them, kind of a thing. So, and I am glad that I didn't ignore him. We did help him.
That is wonderful. And you were saying before we hit record that that's kind of how it is with you, that there are these beings around you. Yeah. Can you elaborate about that? Tell us about that a bit.
I guess the earliest I can remember is probably being 11 or 12 is when I remember these things. But obviously, I always chalked it up to just an overactive imagination when I was a little girl. And I remember having my blankets over my head, knowing that people were standing at the foot of my bed, knowing it, and not wanting to lower my blankets because I didn't want to see them because I didn't want it to be real. Like if I see them, then it's real kind of a thing. And so that's just kind of how I lived for quite some time. Like I would get out of the shower and there would be hearts drawn all over the mirrors, things like that, where I'd be like, that wasn't me, freaked out. And so I just kind of navigated my adult life that way because I just felt like I maybe was just a little crazier than other people and didn't want to tell anyone about it. And then I had my son. And when he started to show signs like me, then I thought, okay, I need to do some research into this. And we had moved into a house that was very active with spirits. We had a smoker. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff going on in this house. We had children running up and down the hallways. But since he was also playing with the kids, he was pointing in the tree saying, I want to climb up there with those guys. Or he was going, why does that lady keep touching my head? You know, just things like that, where I was like, he's actually probably stronger than me and what he's seeing. And so I had to start doing my own research and, okay, how do I help him live this way? Because he can't grow up thinking he's crazy like how I grew up. And so, yeah, we've just always, everywhere we've lived, I swear it's like they're just flocking to us. I will say the small town we lived in, I think that town in general, somebody needs to go research this town. Very active. Because then we moved to another house that was a portal, and we would see people walking through our upstairs that did not look human, not human bodies at all. But and they would walk through the hallway, and instead of going down the stairs like us, they would just keep going completely straight, like they were on a whole different plane. And we were just watching people walk through. And so I had to teach my kids, just let them go through. They might not even see you, they might just be walking through, and they have no idea. We've just always been surrounded with the unknown and things that don't even look close to being human in our lives.
Ah, growing up psychic. Yes, I am familiar, and living in the house that I live in, I know that there's always something, and it's a natural thing for us that we are born being able to perceive these things. And if we are afraid of it or are taught to be afraid of it, then we're taught that it's not real or bad, then we can turn it off. But I don't recommend that. Don't recommend.
No, I don't. And it's so beautiful to know that the world is bigger anyway, that, yeah, I would not recommend turning it off.
Yeah.
I have turned mine off after having, each time I've had a baby, I did turn it off because for me, it was just too much going on, especially since we would get visitors, like everyone wants to come see the baby. So it would just kind of get to be too much for me anyway. And so I would just kind of flip things off and, try to flip them back on later, which is probably another very selfish move on my part.
You know what you said about your place being a portal and folks passing through. I was doing a space clearing one time for somebody's home, and they were having some odd things going on in their house, so called me out to clear it. And it was a portal, and it was kind of like Grand Central Station with these spirits just coming and going. I said they really don't want anything. They're mostly just passing through. I said I'm just going to set this portal as a one way out, that whatever's here can get out, but can't get back in. And then just blessed the space, did Reiki, prayers, frankincense, myrrh, and Palo Santo, and bowls and chimes. So did all the things. But yeah, it was basically a portal. And we think, here in the United States, you're in the Midwest, I'm in the Midwest, here in the United States, we have to remember where we live has not always been a house.
Right.
And before that, farms and Native Americans and all kinds of things going on in the area. Here in Kansas City, we had some major Civil War battles, and not too far from it.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a good point. Such a good point. Yeah. The history of just the earth in general, so many things have passed through, right? And so many different types of civilizations. And yeah, everything is so different. And we even had I don't even know what it is, but it was a being that lived in our tree in the front. And whenever he came in the house, he was super ornery, and we would have to kick him out each time. He wasn't evil, he was just ornery. And he would come in at night, and he would swipe his hand down my back, and it would be ice cold, and it would wake me up. Oh, I'd wake up so mad at him. And then I would, yell at him, and I could track him. And so I would tell, this is my ex-husband now, but I would tell him then, he's getting ready to go in our daughter's room. And then I would hear her just giggling and laughing and playing. I'm like, and it would be in the middle of the night. And then I'd be like, oh, he's going to our son's room. And then I would hear my son yell, get out. And so I did get to the point where I blocked him so he couldn't come into our house anymore because he was so ornery, just mischievous. And I was like, you stay out there. Stay out there with the birdhouses.
Enjoy the tree. Yeah, that's where you are. This is where we are. Right. We're good. We're good. And it doesn't sound like it was scary per se.
No. Yeah. It was never scary. It was just new. And I think that's the thing to remember. And that's what I try to explain to people is they're like, oh my gosh, were you so scared? And it was like, no, it's new. I think that maybe if you're not used to it, your nervous system might be like, I'm used to my energy only in this field. And then now there's maybe something I either can't see or I don't understand. that's new, and it might freak us out a little bit. But if you get past that, then you start to get a little bit more open to what it is you're feeling or seeing or hearing or whatever it is, because it's different for everybody. So yeah, not scary necessarily, just, oh, this is something I haven't experienced before.
Right. And in my house, it's been active since I moved in the early 90s, but
Mm.
I keep working on the energy of the house, practice good energetic hygiene. It's really benign at its residual.
Yeah.
Anything that felt bad or just not positive, I've sent on its way. So what remains, it's just residual and it's completely benign. I was telling somebody this morning that there is a soldier in my basement, a Civil War soldier in my basement, and his fear makes me afraid. So I don't like to be down there by myself
Oh,
at night. But
mhm.
he's not, he
Yeah.
doesn't want anything. I'd sending him on, but he doesn't want to go. But
Right.
it's
Yeah.
residual energy anyway. So I'm not really sure how
Yeah.
that works, but not causing any
Yeah. I would
problem.
say that's kind of how my house is now. I feel like this is years and years and years worth of dealing with, right? So by now I understand kind of how to lock things down and how to prevent just that overwhelm, if that makes sense. So yeah, I have our house pretty well locked down now. We do have visitors from time to time. If somebody passes away and on my side of the family, my grandma always stops by to say hi to me before she goes and collects, whomever she's getting. So we do still have things like that. My husband's grandpa will still walk through and hit my foot through our bedroom just to wake me up. And then he'll go check on, my daughter, then he's gone. And
Yeah.
I don't block that kind of stuff because I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can come check on us. That's good. Yeah, we're pretty locked down to the point where even physical people can't get in to our house. So
Yeah.
took years, but we're getting it figured out.
Got it. Yeah, got it under control. Now, I will say that my dog who passed in early March, we had to put her down. She's still hanging around. And then
Is
one of,
she?
yeah, she is. So we hear her nails on the floor and we hear her barking and we hear her tags. I mean, she was never much of
Yeah.
a barker, but she did want to, go out to come in. She would bark.
Yeah.
And it's just like a couple of little barks and that's it. And then,
Okay.
maybe a couple times a day, every couple of days. Yeah. So it's really not bad. And this is, I have to stress that any place you go, there's going to be spirits around. There
Mhm.
are. And
Yeah.
I don't know how old your house is. Mine is 105.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah.
there is this thing called the stone tape theory, where certain
Oh, no. Tell me about this.
so stone tape theory is that materials such as plaster walls and limestone basements, which mine is, and there's tons of limestone here in the Midwest, that it holds energy. And so it's kind
Mm.
of like a recording device and it records energy and just replays it. So, I mean,
Oh,
the
wow.
residual hauntings tend to be is something that's
Hmm.
recorded in time and it just keeps
Yeah.
playing out and playing out. I do
Yeah.
feel like our dog is more intelligent and she'll come around,
Yeah.
but yeah, most residual. Hmm.
Wow. Yeah. That makes sense.
How do your kids deal with this?
So this is the hard part. So now I am divorced from their dad, so it makes it a little different. Before the divorce, it was all of us working together and I would tell my kids, "Hey, if you don't want someone in your room, you tell them get out." And I was also still learning how to just protect our house in general to kind of prevent anything from getting too crazy. The portal, I just said, "Hey, they don't even see you. They're just walking through. So think about them like they're walking through the blindfold. Just let them go." And
Yeah.
so we got used to that. We did have a few, like my daughter has a dog that sits on the foot of her bed every once in a while, a few times a year. It just shows up. She says it looks like a mix between like a skeleton dog and a wiener dog. And so we have no idea where this dog came from, but it just lays on our bed. And so like they've gotten used to certain things like that. There's a guy that this is so they still live there with their dad when it's well, we have split custody. So when they're with him, they're still in this portal house. That's what I call it, the portal house. And that one is an old four square home. But there's a guy who stands by the bathroom at night. So like when my son walks through the bathroom, he sees this guy and so my son is not, he just doesn't want to mess around with any of it. So he just says it, he just like curses at this guy, like, get the F out of here.
Get out
And
of
like, then he goes to the bathroom. Yeah. So they're like somewhat used to it. The hard part
here.
is though, is when you have one parent who's open about it and then the other parent was like, this isn't Scooby Doo, this is all made up kind of a thing where it's very mixed signals. But at the end of the day, you can't argue with the fact that there's a skeleton wiener dog sitting on your bed staring at you, right? Like you can't argue that. And
Mhm.
so they're old enough now that they're starting to understand things just from their own perspective, and it's getting a lot easier. But before that, though, they would just kind of bring their stories to me if they weren't at my house. If they were at my house, then they would either just come get me or the next day say, "Hey, I need you to do something to my bedroom because there's too much going on," things like that.
Yeah, we had a bit of that when my daughter was little and she was having bad dreams and she was afraid of the some of the beings in the corners and they weren't bad, but they were bothering her. And so I just did more clearing, more clearing, more clearing, called in Archangel Michael, help with the dreams and put sentries around her bed and she was fine. Yeah, these
Yeah.
kids come in just knowing these things and experiencing these things that might seem a little confusing or puzzling to us grown-ups. So,
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And I can't always see what they see. And I think that's the thing that's confusing too, is
Mhm.
that we're not all having the same experience, which is weird. And so my daughter, my 5-year-old, will even say, if I take her in, because I sit with her for a little bit each night at the foot of her bed, multiple times she has said to me, I want you in here, but I don't want my other mom in here tonight. And so she has another mom who sits in the corner. And she doesn't always want this mom in there. And so, yeah, we just talk through, like, you can tell her to leave. I've never sensed another person in there at all ever, but
Yeah.
I totally believe her based on how our family is. I'm like, yeah, there probably is another mom in there. She says she looks like me. Both of my daughters have had an invisible friend, quote unquote, with the name Katie, which is my great grandmother's name. So I don't know if it's her. I don't know because I can't see her. I've never seen the invisible friend. They just say they're playing with Katie, or they're like, hey, I want for Katie too, or, just, little kids of sharing and things like
Oh,
that. So,
that's super,
yeah.
super interesting. Yeah. Our loved ones on the other side, doesn't matter if our kids have met them or not, can be with them and will show up,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
that gets very, very interesting. I work with a lot of parents who have kids with some of these abilities and just talking with them. It sounds like you're doing a wonderful job. You're not spotlighting them, you're not making a big deal out of it. You're just encouraging of it, teaching them how to deal with it, what to say, how to manage. Yeah, you're doing a great job, I have to
Oh,
say.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's tough, right? Until you meet your community where that's accepted. I can't just go to the mom group down the street and be like, hey, how are you guys dealing with the ghosts? What are you guys doing? It's been kind of a lonely journey as a mother, anyway, until I started to find my community. And then I found all these other moms that are like, oh, yeah, we deal with that too, and then it gets a little bit easier to learn because then we can also just learn from each other. Because when I first got started, I would say 2011 was when I really started looking into what do I do to help my son. And the only things I could find were like scary ghost stories or just things like, I'm like, well, this isn't helpful at all. Or stories that are like, it's the devil and he's come to collect your children, or like just all these things like, well, that's not true either. Like, I know what evil feels like. This is not evil. This is just another being or entity or whatever. So it was very hard for a while to find that help that I needed of like, how do I raise what I consider a normal kid, around these things? And yeah, it took us a while, but we got there.
I wish that we had had somebody to help us when we were kids.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Talk about it being lonely.
Yes. Very lonely
Yeah.
and
And
scary. Yeah.
eerie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't understand what was going on. Well, I didn't even know that I was seeing things that other people weren't. They just thought it was weird that I was. So it was confusing, very confusing.
Yes, definitely. Or I could see, like, if I look at a person, sometimes I can see like a different face over them, or I can see a color over them.
Yes.
And that I wouldn't have known that no one else can see that, or that I would maybe not want to hang out with somebody because I could see that. And I would think, well, we're all seeing it, right? Like, how do you guys
Yeah.
not see that? Yeah,
We're
it's,
all seeing
yeah,
it, right? No, we're not.
yeah,
We're not.
yeah.
Well, we're just about out of time here, Ashley. I don't want to let you go without talking about your book that you have displayed behind you, Villain Era Goddess, Villain Era Goddess, which is available, it looks like on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes and Noble. Can you tell us a bit about your book?
Yeah, thank you. It is a book that I wrote about setting boundaries and rebuilding your confidence. So I had a very lonely journey of cutting out the abusers in my family and not talking to them, and then kind of being the black sheep of the family who wasn't putting family first anymore. And it goes through all of the things that I did to help myself because I would go home just crushed, and I had to all by myself rebuild myself back up. very lonely process. So it's all of the things that I did. And some of them are very non-conventional. I do cord cutting ceremonies. I work with salt. I do so many things. I bring pieces of my soul back to myself. I do a lot of things that you might not hear about in regular therapy sessions, but they are things that helped me as well. And so, yeah, that's what my book is. And I just want women to read it and be like that inner roar of I can do this and I'm not by myself. So yeah, that's the book. And I have affirmations and coloring pages and all kinds of things in there.
Coloring pages. I love coloring pages.
Yeah.
Oh, for those of you who are listening on audio and not on the YouTube, behind Ashley are quotes. We pulled knives out of our backs and used them to pin affirmations to the walls. I love that. Release fear, set boundaries, build confidence.
Build confidence. Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
And the whole premise too is unleash your inner goddess, right? So, like, we are not just normal women, we are goddesses, and goddesses are terrifying in the very best ways. And so that's what I want women to know. Like, we're not just sweet, innocent, sit in the corner. Like, we can get up and fight for ourselves and for our families. And we are perfect when we do that. We are just fine.
Right. We're fierce. Right.
Yes, we are fierce.
And then just a few words about your podcast, Abomination Goddess.
Yes, so it's once a week on Wednesdays, and we basically talk about anything weird. Growing up being the weirdo, and my co-host, she was also a weirdo, where, we don't really fit in. We have our ghost stories, our entity stories, all the things. We talk about vibrations and smells, everything. And we wanted a safe place for other people who feel weird as well. So, yeah.
Well, I have been on that show, and it certainly was a safe, brave space. Thank you for creating that. And thank you so much for joining me today. I think it's helpful for people to know that their children are okay, that they are experiencing things that maybe not everybody does, but it's a gift rather than a curse or a detriment. It is a good thing.
Yes, good and normal.
And normal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back. In the second part of this episode, I thought I would share some stories from my house and my family, my kid. I had such a great time talking with Ashley about what was going on at her house. I was reminded of several stories of my own from here in Kansas City, Missouri. So my kid, when she was little, she said some very strange things. One thing that I thought was pretty unusual, I just thought I would ask her if she had any memory whatsoever of life before she was my kid. And she said, yeah, I was yucky and I had to die. I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, she was maybe 2 years old at the time. She was not very big. And I'm not really sure what kind of past life memory she was coming up with. Maybe she was a leper. Maybe she was burned at the stake as a witch, or hung, or put in the stocks, or guillotined even as a criminal or some sort of enemy of the state. Who knows? But I was yucky and I had to die. Interesting. And about the same time frame, she was, again, maybe 2, no more than 3, but really little. It had been raining every day for days on end. I was getting really tired of it, and she was too. And I said, boy, I really wish it would stop raining, don't you? And my kiddo said, we should ask Amen. Amen can make it stop raining. I thought, what the heck? Who is Amen? Well, I looked it up, and lo and behold, Amen was an Egyptian sun god. Where did she get that from? Who knows? But I was certainly intrigued and thinking, I wonder what spiritual stories my kid has for me. Another time, there is this little stone chapel in Kansas City. It's on Gillum Road, and Gillum Road is a very well-traveled road in Midtown Kansas City. There's a little tiny chapel, and it's now called the Pilgrim Church. But back when it was built, maybe early 1900s, it was the Deaf Church. It's a tiny little thing, and it looks like something out of a Thomas Kinkade painting. It is so quaint. And we drove by this little chapel often, maybe not every day, but at least several times a week. And my kid, one day, she just wanted to look at it. she pointed at it and indicated, "Stop, Mom." I mean, she didn't have many words under her belt, but she said, "Can we look at that church?" But, in a little baby talk. And so I did. I pulled over and we got out and we looked at that church. We snuck around and peeked in windows where we could. It was locked up tight, of course, but got her fix and got her fill of looking at that little church. Who knows what type of past life memory she might have had about that church in particular, or something that seemed very much like it, maybe in another country, in another century. And then there's also the story of one Sunday we were going hiking with a meetup group, people we didn't know. And again, my kiddo was pretty little, about the same age, quite honestly. All of these things happened when she was really little. So we were going on this hike. This was before we started going to the church that we go to, but we were a little bit lost. We were trying to find this meetup group and take our hike, and I'd gotten turned around. And I realized, oh, shoot, I need to be going the other way. So, as you do, I pulled into a parking lot to turn around. Well, wouldn't you know it? It was about 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And all these people started pouring out of church and going to their cars. Oh my gosh, I knew it would take a while for us to be able to get out of there with all that traffic. And my daughter, out of the blue, she said, "Well, what are those people doing, Mama?" And I said, "Oh, they're getting out of church, honey. It's going to be a while. They need to go to their cars and they need to leave, but they're coming out of church." And my daughter said, "Well, they don't like it very much. They don't like it very much. What?" And I asked, "Why do you say they don't like it very much?" And she said, "Well, because they don't like what they tell them and they take all their money away." Oh my goodness. I had no idea what was going on there or where she had gotten that story. Can you imagine? So, of course, Monday, the next day, I'm calling her school and I'm asking the teacher, "Have you guys been talking about churches or people not liking the church message or people taking their money at church, anything like that?" And the teacher said, "No, we kind of talked about the pilgrims because it was the fall and we were looking ahead towards Thanksgiving." She said, "We were kind of talking about the pilgrims and how they left England because they didn't like the restrictions that their clergy were putting on them. And they wanted to worship in their own way. But that's about it." Interesting. I don't know where she got these ideas. And then in my house, my pretty haunted house, actually, this house was built in 1920. So it is 105 years old. Yeah, 105 years old. And it has been through so many different changes and so many different eras. And when I'm home alone, and my daughter too, because it's just my daughter and me, when either one of us are home alone and it's night, usually this happens at night, and everything is quiet. We live on a busy street. So there's no sounds coming off of the road and things are still, you can hear music in the walls, all different types of eras, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, well, not 80s, but usually stops around early 70s type of music. And very faintly, but you can hear it. And it sounds like a radio in the other room. People have heard voices in here. One night I was visiting with a student and we were both in the living room. And I paused and I said, "Okay, do you hear that? Do you hear that upstairs?" And she said, "Yeah, your husband's upstairs, right?" I said, "Well, no, I don't have a husband at the moment. And there's nobody here but you and me." Oh my goodness, her face went white and she was speechless. So this is the house that my kid has grown up in. Now she's 18 at this point. She's getting ready to go to college as I record this. So she'll occasionally talk about the different sounds she hears in the walls and different things going on. But again, when she was little, I'd say, 2, 3 years old, she would ask me, "Mama, weren't you upstairs?" And I would tell her, "No, honey, I just came upstairs." She goes, "But you were up here before." No, honey, I was downstairs. And she said, but I heard your walking feet. That's how she put it. Footsteps were walking feet. She says, I heard your walking feet. So I thought you were upstairs. Nope. So we will occasionally have things move around the house. We'll hear something. We did lose our dog, sadly, in March of this year. We put our beloved little puppers down for her final nap and her final vet visit. And very sad about that. But we both hear her around the house, hear her nails clicking on the hardwood floors. We hear her tags jingling. We hear her little bark. She was never a barker, but she would let out one little yip or two to be let out or be let inside. And so we still hear her even months later. And I know that she's around and she's with us. We even have a cat that jumps up on my bed. When my daughter was little, she used to sleep with me. And we would feel a cat jump up on the bed and look over, and no cat. We have cats, but this was a cat that was no longer physical. So I do feel like that cat came with the house and was not one of mine. So that's interesting about my kid. Now, when she got to be about 6 or 7 years old, these stories stopped. And that's very typical when kids get to be about the age of 6 or 7, that veil that has been lifted starts to come down again, and we lose these gifts. Now, we're all born with spiritual gifts. Some of us more developed than others. And some of us, some people say that I'm as sensitive as a stone, but everybody does have access to these gifts from birth. And just like being able to sing. Now, as soon as we're born, we can open our mouth and make sounds. As we get older, we learn to hum some tunes and maybe sing a few melodies. And we can easily improve our singing with practice, and we can train and improve our voice. But some people never really get very good at singing, even though they can open their mouth and make songs come out. This is the same with intuitive gifts. We're all born with intuitive gifts. And some of us have more touch with our spiritual gifts than others. And just like my example of being able to sing, we can learn to work with these gifts. We can learn to trust them. We can learn to hone them. We can develop them and make them better. Or we can leave them alone and let them wither and fade. And some kids are very naturally, spiritually gifted from the start and very active, seeing many things, hearing many things. When I was a baby, I was talking to ghosts. My father tells the story of he was a night watchman at, the Kansas City Southwest High School, which was a WPA era 1930s build, huge high school in the Kansas City area. It is ginormous. And he was a night watchman there when he was in college, and I was just a little baby. My mother worked nights as an x-ray tech, and he worked nights as a night watchman. So he would take me in my playpen and bring his books to study with. And he'd set me up in the playpen. When it was time to do rounds, he'd pick me up with a flashlight, and we'd go all over the school and make our rounds. But one night, he was studying, and I was babbling in my playpen. And I stood up, held onto the rails of the playpen, and waved to somebody in the corner and said, "Hi, Mr. Man." According to my dad, he quit the next day because he was kind of spooked. So we can scare these gifts out of children. Now, I don't think that it affected me. I don't remember hearing this story until I was an adult, but he swears up and down it was true. And if a child is frightened or someone around them is frightened by what the child is seeing or experiencing, they can shut down these gifts. Likewise, if there is a parent or a grandparent or a babysitter telling them, "Oh, you're just making it up," or even worse, "Stop that now. That is the devil." Right. So if we hear any of these messages about it being frightening or scary, or we're just making it up, or it's wrong or bad or anything like that, we can turn those gifts off. But I never recommend that. In fact, I recommend that we practice with these gifts. We learn to accept them. not to judge them, and learn to grow them. Because if we shut down these gifts, think about it, that energy has to go somewhere. And it can go toward insomnia and anxiety and depression, things that we don't necessarily want. So we want to keep those gifts open. I had written an article years ago for Evolving Magazine, which very sadly is no more. Even the online version is no longer online. So I can't share the link with you guys, but I wrote an article about raising spiritually gifted children. And there are some things to keep in mind. One is believe them. If they are talking about their imaginary best friend, believe them. If they're talking about there is a grandma in my room comes to me at night, believe them. If it's frightening for them, teach them simple ways to protect themselves. Anybody can tell these spirits to go away. We can tell them that I'm frightened. I don't want you bothering me. You need to go back to where you came from. We don't need you or want you around here. We should be kind. We should be firm, but certainly not mean or not punitive or sarcastic or anything like that. We want to be firm and direct. You cannot stay here. You're frightening me. You're frightening my parents. You need to leave. Sometimes it takes our children a few times of saying this. Other things we can do to help our kids who are maybe struggling with these gifts, we can give them some talismans or different things for protection. So amethysts, tourmaline, black tourmaline, any kind of dark stone is good for grounding and protection. Do some research into different types of stones that can be used for protection and let your children have those in their room. Now, there can be a dependence that kids have with a talisman or a crystal or something like that, that they feel like they cannot be okay if they don't have it. And it's easy to lose. So be careful of balancing that with your kids and let them know this is something we're going to keep in your room. And maybe here's another stone or something you can use to keep in your pocket when you're at school or when you're with your friends. And another thing that we can do is instruct the kids that, yeah, this is an interesting talent. It's an interesting gift. And there are certainly interesting things going on around you. But they're not really something you should talk about with people because people don't understand. People can think it's scary. People can think it's weird. I certainly grew up in suburban Kansas City thinking that it was weird, all of the things that I was experiencing, because all of the kids at school told me it was weird. And I learned not to talk about it. So you can tell your kids, be careful who you talk to about this. Not everybody's going to understand and not everybody's going to accept it. Be protective of this gift. Which brings me to my next point. Be protective of your kids. It's not something that we want to do to ask them to perform, right? We don't want to make them the spotlighted person. We don't want to shine a light on them unnecessarily. So even though our kids might know things or be able to see things, it would be inappropriate to ask them for a reading or ask them what they think about something that they're perceiving, because they just need to be kids. It's not their responsibility. Encouraging our children to use these gifts in a responsible manner and believing them. This is huge. And this is how we teach our children to be balanced in it. And when they grow up, they can decide what they want to do with these gifts. So forcing them to use them or signing them up for classes with a well-known medium or psychic if the kid doesn't want to do it. Now, of course, we can give them the choice or we can let them ask for that. And I work with parents and children often, helping them understand these spiritual gifts and understanding how to help their kids that have these gifts. Anyway, this is a fascinating subject and definitely something I was excited to bring to you guys because I think this is the wave of the future. As we progress in human evolution, more and more kids and children are going to be using these gifts, and adults too, because we are on a spiritual mission and a spiritual journey. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and follow and be sure to share this episode. The more people who know about this podcast, the more great story submissions we get. Have a story to share? Email your own real-life angel encounter to angelencounterspodcast@gmail.com or visit radiatewellnesscommunity.com/real life angel encounters podcast, or join our Facebook group and continue the discussion. Want to know what your angels and loved ones have to tell you? Schedule an appointment with me at radiatewellnesscommunity.com. A special thanks to James Wheeler for the original music and to Tiffany Baumgarten for the logo design.